Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that we can come together as believers, as friends, to briefly consider your work. We pray for a blessing in our time share this afternoon, that your Spirit may talk to us and you may be in our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. So good afternoon, friends. I say friends because a lot of you are my friends out there, and you will be my friends, I guess, with time. I bring our warm aloha from the 50th state of Hawaii. We are from, when I say we, my family's from the island of Kauai. That's where we're residing. And I just wanted to kind of throw out a trivia question here. When was Hawaii when did it become the 50th state? What year? Anyone out there? Well, it became a state in August of 1959. So some of us are, it's definitely within our lifetime. It's our youngest state. It is the 50th state. And so that's kind of where we're living. That's where we're doing work and ministry and whatnot. And so this afternoon's topic is titled Beyond Drilling, Filling, and Billing. I think we all, as providers or practitioners, are familiar with that. That's kind of what we do, for the most part, let's say. But this is from a Christian point of view. And so it may be helpful to you to understand that it has a little more of a Christian slant to the things that we do here. As usual, I want to kind of introduce you to my family, because this is a big part of my responsibility. My greatest responsibility and greatest joy is this, our family. And it cuts both ways, but through the joys, we have the stress and the obligation and responsibility of taking care of each other and especially our children here. This is our most recent picture, probably a couple weeks ago, to one of our favorite hikes on the Nepali coast, and try to do this like 3-4 times a year, and it's always a joy to do it with family. And so if you ever on the island, just let me know. There's a workaround where I can get you a permit in for the day hike there. Having said that, here it is, our dog Mango. She is probably one of the only other constant in our lives other than God. Loves us regardless, always happy, just stable, constant animal. And just, it's so good to have something constant in your life, right? Just because everything else seems to be just everywhere and anywhere. And here's our 3 little, we call it small human beings. They love their tropical long gone, like their lychee, but it's kind of a cousin of lychee, and they just love just eating that. I also want to mention that I don't have a picture of my wife here, but we saw it before, and that's my wife Janie, who's sitting with us in the front. She's an ophthalmologist. And so she had a presentation earlier on the other side. And so she's with us. We live, again, on our favorite Hawaiian island, Kauai, where life's a bit more simple, slow, and green. That's why they call it the Garden Island. It's a great place to be a kid. I tell my kids all the time, great place to be a kid where you're surrounded by beaches, hikes, in God's playground. You don't have to worry about any animals that's going to hurt you. We got chickens, goats, and pigs. And they're equally afraid of us as well. So they don't bother you. You don't bother them. Everyone's happy. We don't have any poison ivy, so kids can roam around, roll around, and still be safe. So I tell them that they're very fortunate to be in God's playground every day. We're active members of the Kapa'a Seventh Adventist Church, where we're doing His work. We're busy at it, and we're very fortunate to be there. Someone's got to be in Kauai, right? So we chose to be one of them. I'm one of those favored dentists, I'd say, that should not have been a dentist without the goodness of God. It's often easy to forget God's leading and guidance in your life when life seems to be very stable and it's on cruise control. But I'm sure there are someone else out here like me that should not have been a dentist or should not have been where you are or should not even be here without God's goodness? And if so, you can consider yourself favored as well. A few years after graduating from dental school, my wife and I accepted a call with the General Conference to go overseas to a country called Zambia, where we served as medical missionaries for 6 years. As with many things, we had envisioned what mission life was supposed to be. But when we got there, like many things in life, it was different. So you have what you envision and what reality is, and that was very different. We had some very challenging years, yet it was some of our best years of our lives. We've learned a lot about church politics, whether you like it or not, you learn that. Church politics, we learned about the various cultures, tribalism, and a lot about like finding solutions, because we had to wear many hats. But we also learned a lot about humanity and the complex world we live in. We went there without kids. We came back with 3. So we were busy on many fronts. We didn't have much in terms of worldly toys, modern equipment, technology, conveniences, or just even deep pockets out there. But our deep purpose to lead, elevate, and sustain our respective institutions for God's work was what fueled our young hearts. Since then, we have established ourselves on Kauai and have been there for the past 7 years. The first month on Kauai, I started working as an associate, and this could be similar to some other associate jobs when you're starting off. The owner was a little bit, I say shady. He had some questionable conduct in his finances and eventually got caught for insurance fraud, and so I quit too. I'm like, I'm out of this. And so with that, no job. Because with jobs and many places, and especially on a little island, it comes in waves. It's either feast or famine. You got a lot of jobs or no jobs. You got no job, then you got to figure things out. So, at that point, I just decided to do a startup. I figured if I can do Africa, I can kind of do this. And so that was kind of our next move. So 6 years ago, we built our first, when I say we, it's because my wife's always involved in our life, and we're kind of one unit, right? So we built our first dental practice from scratch. Just to put things in perspective, we have about 15 dental practice within 4 to 5 mile radius of where we are. So it wasn't like we're the only show in town. We had other existing practice, but we were desperate, and we just kind of hung our shingles, and there's an old saying that there was always good room for another dentist, right? So I took my chances, and we started on that journey. We outgrew our space within 4 years, and currently we're building out a larger facility with 8 operatories, and so we're at a very busy stage, and that should be done at the end of this month. So yeah, and we're already in November. So end of November, we'll have a new facility, and that we'll transfer over to. As you know, building is never easy, but it's extremely frustrating and challenging, especially on an island where everything has to be imported and barged in, and it just gets harder when you have the element of living on an island. We know that as a family, we've always believed that there is strength in numbers, and in order to have a greater influence in our communities, especially on our island, we started to recruit families to Kauai. Families and friends. So during the past several years, we're pretty busy trying to network and bringing in people, and fortunately, we're able to recruit 4 families so far. We got another one coming in, but the first 2 are the dentists that I need. So I brought in 2 Adventist dentists with their family and kids. I have an Adventist hygienist. My wife, Janie, recently recruited an ophthalmologist, Adventist ophthalmologist, and his wife's a dentist. So, and we have I don't know if you guys know Cosmin and Arena, they're educators out at Weimar, but they recently moved down. He's a lawyer, and she's running our choir out there. So lots happening. It was mainly for a small little church. Now we got 4 Adventist dentists, we got a hygienist, we have a couple ophthalmologists. I mean, we're trying to build. We need the building blocks in order for us to launch. So that was kind of our big vision, big strategy as to how we're going to grow the work. And so this was all done to help the work of Christ. So clinical care in dentistry can be challenging at times, as we all know. However, managing and leading, your motley crew to a dream team is even harder. I think we've all been there. We're dealing with people that we got to train from scratch. They come with all various set of baggages and challenges. And these are the people that we're working with. So you have a motley crew of folks, and you're trying to manage them and lead them so we can all work together as one. So I call it the dream team, right? So I want to start by sharing a few stories, because I think we all enjoy these stories. And so the first one, and when I share these stories, it's not to make certain things look bad, but it's just a reality of life. And I think if we're all honest about it, our lives are not always perfect. It can look ugly at times. It can look messy. But if if we can be transparent and vulnerable about it, we can learn a lot. So the first story comes from our experience in Zambia, because it does relate to some of the management part of clinical care and dentistry. And so so I have a habitual cough, so I'm not sick or anything, but when I get excited, I start to cough. And so what happened was, when we went to Zambia, and within 6 months, while we were there, I get a call. And they're like, "Hey, Doc, the clinic's on fire." I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, the clinic's on fire." And so I drive up there, and I see a couple bodies kind of on the ground in the grass, and it wasn't really on fire, but I think it was starting to burn up in a few areas. So to make a long story short, I didn't know what to do. I just said, okay, well, everyone just needs to try to get their wounds taken care of, and some of them did. And the following day, I went and I said, wow, there's some burning spots here and there. And something that was strange was that we had all these burnt spots in corners of the practice, and I found a petrol can, and I saw a box of matches. So when I asked my office manager what's going on, she said, "I don't know," because she got burnt in the process. She said, "I don't know what's going on. Everything just blew up. Everything blew up." And I'm like, blowing up? I mean, if it was blowing up, it's not going to discriminate where it burns. I mean, this is like a corner here, a corner there. Everything just blew up. And I'm like, I don't know, that story doesn't make sense. So then I had to kind of wear my detective hat and trying to figure out things, because I don't know, but no one knew. So then I said, well, we have petrol tank, we have box of matches, we got a few areas that are being torched. And then I start to look at our receipt books, right? Because you have to go there at some point. So I started to look at the receipt books, and because everything is paper, everything is triplicate. So you have one that goes to the patient, one goes to stays on the book, one goes to the account department. Come to find out, our business manager was manipulating the numbers. So she would give one, but she would change the numbers. So she needed to cook the books. So in order to cook the books, she had to burn the clinic down, because she knew she was stealing. So here we are in a tough situation, because she was a pastor's wife, an influential pastor's wife. And it was difficult because, we are the foreigners in a country where they're very close. And I had to confront her, because nobody else wanted to confront her, because culturally it's very difficult to have those conversations. So here you are, we're the newbies in town, but then we have to make these difficult conversations. And while that was happening, while my wife's eye hospital was having similar stuff where you have a whole team of the whole business department, accounting department was stealing. And they confessed to it, but nothing was being done. So here we are, we're blazing, we're trying to pinpoint these things. We're battling this fight, and then the union was blaming us. So now you have the church folks turning against us, saying that you guys are the Muzungus, or you guys are the foreigners, and you don't know what you're doing, you're causing a lot of problems. I'm like, I don't know if I'm causing problems. I'm just trying to figure out who burnt the clinic down, who's trying to. And so they knew exactly what took place. But what can you do, right? Eventually, we had our meetings, and I wanted to terminate her, but the board wouldn't allow me to do that, because it would weaken the husband's ministry. So eventually, we allowed her to resign after a lot of accusations, and she's just a lot of back and forth. Just to make a long story short, it was a very difficult time, and so it was one of those stories where you realize even inside, when I say inside, our church system, very challenges. Challenges are in the private sector, it's internal. Challenges anywhere as long as you have human beings, right? Broken people. And so it was a hard awakening to the mission work, and to deal with it like up front with the church and their leadership wasn't easy, because growing up you have these ideas as what missionaries do, and just the idea of going and doing a lot of great things and working with amazing people that are equally invested, and but you realize that wasn't the case, and it made our job a little harder just because we had to deal with things objectively, which also helped turn the institutions around. So that's one. But when I opened my startup practice on Kauai, I started with a highly functioning alcoholic as my office manager. Do you guys know highly functioning alcoholics? I didn't know they existed. But since I'm always kind of on my roller skates and when I'm working and I'm just going from one room to the other with my mask, I don't know, I guess I didn't smell it. But in hindsight, I wondered why she always used the restroom and stayed there for a long time. I just assumed that some people just had a condition that required you to be in the restroom for 10, 15 minutes. I don't know, just an awkward conversation to have, right? Like you can't say, "Can you hurry up?" And so it was one of those things. So after about 2 years, she came clean and told me that she is a highly functioning alcoholic, and she recently checked herself into AA. She was prepared to be let go because she knew that wasn't consistent with my values or the practice values, and she was very nervous about our meeting. She knew that I was a practicing Christian since our practice had Christian values, and we've definitely had some conversations about faith and religion. So as I listened to her story, her struggle, her shame, she cried. And I cried. It was mainly because the burden that she was carrying, the burden of carrying a secret for a couple of years kind of came together. And it was too much for her to bear. I empathized with her since I also had my shares of struggles in life, which I wasn't proud of. Being at a more stable place in my life, I was able to offer her support. I prayed for her and assured her that I will stand by her on the road to recovery. So when she received the words of support and hope, and not judgment and condemnation, it seemed as if she was given a second wind to overcome alcohol for good. She completed her AA and left the island when her husband had to be relocated for another job. We still keep in touch, and she still thanks me for helping her. And as the Lord continues to show mercy and grace, my hope is that she'll be open to God's leading in her life. So simply, broken people living in a broken world, held by the bondage of addiction and sin. This is our reality. I have a dental assistant who was trained on our job. She didn't have the best role models in life. Both parents were into, we call it ice on Hawaii, or crystal meth. She had children as a teenager. Her childhood upbringing was very challenged, to put it mildly. She lived with her boyfriend for 10 plus years and eventually got kicked out. She joined our team, and due to all the instability in her personal life, she wasn't very reliable. I was more frustrated than satisfied and with her work performance. My plan was to have her replaced yesterday. And I found, as soon as if I find someone, she would have been gone. However, we were in the post-COVID era. You know what that is, right? It's hard to have anyone show up, let alone come up for interviews. I mean, it's just, we're kind of stuck. And so she was stuck with us, and I was stuck with her. I had to play the cards I had at that time. Later, I've learned that she was living out of her car. She was temporarily homeless, thus the instability in her life. So broken people living in a broken world, where the enemy is indeed like a roaring lion looking and searching to break everything good. So it has been nearly 3 years, and she is now my lead assistant. And many of the deficiencies have been resolved. I've invested in her training courses and gave her life advice, helped show her a better path that's found in Christ, simply bringing hope and healing to those you work with. So in the past 6 months, she has been attending a Sunday church where her close friends invited her. And she accepted Jesus into her life, and she believes in the power of prayers and takes great pride in having a life of stability and hope. One day, I'm convinced that she'll be an Adventist Christian. So I may not have stories of finding a target and giving them Bible studies and seeing them through some kind of baptism or anything like that. But I've accepted the fact that I may always play a small part in one's spiritual journey. And just moving them a bit closer to Christ. Just moving the needle a bit closer to the hope that we all enjoy. I know that ultimately it is not by might nor power, but by His Spirit working on hearts, that He'll continue to draw all of us unto Him. As we heard last night, this is a fairly common statement. And this is, Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with people as one who desired their good, showed sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence, and then invited them, follow me. So whether they accept His ways or not, the invitation has always been there. And I think that's such an important part for us to understand. Mingling, to desire their good regardless of what they choose, to show sympathy, to minister to their needs, and to win their trust. I think that's something that we all can do. And to ultimately invite them to the great hope that's found in Jesus. In a world full of complexities in pursuits, cultures, and influence, striving to run a successful for-profit business and doing ministry may seem incompatible. I have always felt that. I felt a little weird, right? Like, you're trying to do ministry, yet, well, we got to sustain some profit so we can keep things going. And so it was just incongruent. I just didn't know. So this afternoon, I'm going to try to share with you some of just my experience. And I'm definitely not a guru in this field, but something that has been working for us. And so end of our brief time shared together, my hope is that we'll have considered some different ways to juggle business, ministry, and dentistry. So I want to start by kind of giving you some big highlights as to what we're going to be talking about. So identify the different ways in which dentistry can support the work of Christ. So for a while, I thought ministry had to look a certain way, and the methods and approach must follow a certain formula to achieve a certain outcome for it to be successful. Have you guys ever thought of that too? Like ministry, in order for it to look good, it has to do this way, that way, and it has to have this outcome for it to be successful. Maybe it's just me, but I've always that kind of stuck in my mind. But I've come to accept and appreciate the different ways folks are participating in His work. Our common denominator is Christ's method, as I mentioned, and that it's a very simple method of just taking care of our people. So that Christ's method. But some of the ways that dentistry can support the work of Christ is kind of the common theme of short-term missions, charity clinics, working with local churches or local ministries. You got working in public health centers to private sectors to even academic institutions. And you got the long-term missions. I think these are some of the most common areas where we can support the work of Christ as the right arm of the gospel. However, we must not underestimate the simple influence that comes with what we do. Whether you are an assistant or hygienist, office manager or a dentist or just any provider, more often than not, people will come to us in some degree of distress and there's a need. And if we can show sympathy, compassion, listen, and explain, and to win their trust, we've come a long ways in utilizing Christ's method. And so we must not forget that our ministry and the work of Christ goes beyond just patient care in dentistry. Running charity clinics or going on mission trips may not be your cup of tea. However, as a dentist or a practice owner, we can still support the work of Christ with our influence and definitely our finances. So for we know that your success is God's success. Thus, a successful career should be committed to the work of Christ, helping our local churches, whether it's sending kids on, or providing scholarships so that they can to needy families so they can get an Adventist education, whether it's helping out with building projects in church or supporting other ministry events. These are all tied to the work of Christ. So through dentistry and our business and our practice, we can do all these things, and such an important part of who we are and what we do as Adventist Christians. Again, to be honest, I don't have it all figured out to how to best support the work of Christ, but I continue to use Christ's method in my circle of influence. So the second one is to discuss creative ways in nurturing the golden goose. The golden goose, our dental practice, to support and sustain his work. So just looking for ways that we can take care of it, because sometimes we're too eager, and we can get into this mentality that, hey, listen, we need to kill the golden goose because Jesus is coming tomorrow. Mentality. Then you forfeit everything and realizing that, listen, God gives us talents that we can be smart about it and that we can grow it and sustain the work. And so as you know, work is where some of us spend most of our day. Dentistry is hard. Patience can be hard. Equipment and technology can be hard. Managing your team can be hard. In short, everything seems hard, right? Life is hard. Life is hard. So we must look for ways to minimize the hard. How do we minimize the hard? Living on an island where we don't have any dental repair or equipment support, equipment guys, it's hard. One of the many things I've learned in Africa was this. One thing. Having one is like having none. Have you heard of that phrase? Probably not so much in the Western world, but in developing countries where things are hard, having one is truly like having none. That means if you have one spare tire, that's not enough. You need two for your journey. And so I feel like sometime on the island of Kauai, we feel that way, because if you have one compressor and if it goes down, you're out. It could be weeks. And that means a week of shutting down your office is pretty bad, right? So you need, especially a critical piece of equipment. So you need a backup, and you also need redundancies. And redundancies could be for team members as well, because who knows when they'll be called or they leave you. It's not as if you can just find the next replacement. So you need redundancies in just critical equipment, including staff. So post-COVID has resulted in increased challenges, as we all know, in HR issues, increased cost of supplies and materials, and running a dental practice has definitely gone up, let alone cost of living associated with just inflation in general for everybody. So everyone's feeling that a bit. Everything went up except what? Reimbursements, right? Insurance reimbursements. So everything's going up, payments going down, so there's a little bit of a squeeze there. So how do we take care of the golden goose with the various headwinds facing our day-to-day business? Some of the things that are working for us is, we built a culture that's unique to our office, I guess, in many ways. We We take pride in what we do. We make sure that everyone plays a part and they know their part. They feel valued. They feel appreciated. They feel safe. We believe in supporting one another, building each other up. A culture that's making a positive difference in people's lives, and the lives that they care for. I think having a culture definitely helps you withstand some of the waves of life or the winds. Another thing is you sharpen the saw. Sometimes we think we just put our head down and just work. Not realizing that sometimes that isn't good. There was an experiment done by Microsoft. They call it the Microsoft experiment in Japan. And what they did was, those places, they tend to work long hours and they put their head down and they take, it's shameful to actually call off or be sick. So they just kind of workaholics. And so the experiment went on and they said, everyone gets a 3-day weekend. And it showed that by decreasing the work days, they're able to increase productivity by 40%. And that is kind of one thing of like sharpening the saw. Just because you're there doesn't mean you're productive, and that's not true. Sometimes we just put our head down and just work and just clock in 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, whatever you want. And it doesn't always translate to productivity. I know that we should be able to, I wanted my team to bring 100% when they work with us. 100% every day. And how do you do that? How do you try to get the last squeeze out of this orange? And so we try to look for ways that would make them well. So for us, this model works for us. It may not work for everyone else, but model works for us is our last patient's at 2 o'clock. We are all done before 3. I tell them, you need to go back to your house. You need to go and cook for your family. You got your kids. You got homework to help out. You need to go exercise. We all got things to do. But a lot of times what we see is burnout in people. They work from 9 to 5 or 6. They come home. Kids are hungry. Husband's angry. You don't get to talk. Some people turn on their TV and guess what? They eat, watch TV, go to bed. They do that all week. On the weekend, they're trying to recover and they can't. Guess what? They bring that baggage back to work. And no wonder a lot of our staff, they just exist. They give you their 60%. And I didn't like that because I felt like we could do better for our patients. We could do better for the practice. And if we could be creative about how we can make this work. If they are well, they can be well for me. But they need to be well. And the only way they can be well is to have something that I can break off the mode of, because why are they stuck in the same traffic everybody else is? It makes no sense. To be stuck in a traffic, 1 hour going one way, 1 hour going the other way, guess it just, your life, you lose time. Time is life and money. And so we created a different model where we start earlier, we get done earlier, everyone seems to be happier, and we don't have some of those issues that others may have. We have I call it winning daily. I think of our dental practice to be in a long sports season. You have the football season, you got basketball season, you got baseball season. Unfortunately, our season just never ends. We just have a long season. So we have this idea of winning daily. I said each play, we got to make it count. Each down must count. My emphasis is not to win in the last 2 minutes of the game. Because sometimes they get into this habit. They're like, oh, we got our monthly goal. Oh, we're almost there. I said, if we took care of it in the front end, we wouldn't be where we are, trying to win in the last 2 minutes. And so I try to remind them that elite athletes, concert musicians, you got sports teams, what they do, even if they win their championship, next Sunday, next week, they defend their title. That means going back to practice. Practice, practice, practice. And the old saying is practice makes perfect. And so that is kind of what we try to emphasize is like, if we want to be winning every day, we got to make it count. You can't just expect to just walk into winning. We also talk about playing the cards that we're dealt each day. We're given a new set of cards every day. None of us are given a perfect hand. Sometimes we may, when everything lines up and everything is perfect and it's just a perfect day. But those are rare. We're given a new set every day. And we look for creative ways to be more efficient and productive, working on our systems, our workflows, ultimately trying to create a more predictable outcome. Because I think if you have predictable outcome, it decreases stress. It decreases the chaos that happens during the day. Recognizing our team is only as strong as our weakest link. So sometimes we forget. We get frustrated with our weakest link and say, you know what, like you're borderline going to be fired because you just can't do it. Not realizing we need to invest in them. We need to build them up. We need to have them be a part of our team, realizing that we're only as strong as him or her. And so we encourage going through like role plays, going over, again, our workflows, internal systems. And during any of our downtimes, we are always trying to train. That way our team as a whole can be strengthened. So investing in our team members are really one of the few assets they'll actually appreciate and value with time, right? Everything else just gets older and older and it depreciates. Next thing you know, it's just big paperweight. Whereas if you have some good team members, you invest in them and they appreciate and value and they bring a lot to the table. And then there's the other side of the coin, right? You invest in them, what happens if they run away, right? And they go somewhere else? Well, I'll be more concerned about what happens if you don't invest in them, they get stuck with you, not knowing anything. So it's always better to take the chance of investing and keeping up with their pay scale and benefits and whatnot that you can retain and keep asset on your team. It's kind of in many ways it's like sports, and you get all these players getting traded, and you got some guys from the G League or whatever, and they come up and you groom them, you invest in them, they become all-stars, and at some point they're going to demand their wages, and you pay for that, as long as you're winning, right? That's what it counts. So another thing that we do, I try to encourage with my associates and my staff is to, the saying, they say, army marches on its what? I guess it's a British saying, but army marches on its stomach. So we try to do these things, right, of like feeding them and doing all these things. It can go a long ways, but beyond just feeding, I think there needs to be a spirit of giving thanks. Thanking our patients after each treatment care, because they can actually go anywhere else, but they've come to put their trust in you. So thanking our patients, also thanking everyone else that's participating in that treatment. The assistants need to be thanked, because by giving thanks to each of them, it creates a spirit of just thanksgiving, and they appreciate that, and they feel valued, and they're not just spit suckers, right? They're there as a part of the team that makes us complete the work. And so being able to thank them it's such an important part. So we're going into our third part here. It says, embrace God's blessings and talents He entrusts us with. I don't know how your mornings start, but because I have this unique schedule, my first patient's seen at 7. So that means I'm up and trying to be on the road by like 6:15. And it's easy to do so. On Kauai, there's not anything to do. At night, when the sun goes down, there's nothing to do. You just go to bed, unless you're looking for trouble. In the morning, the chickens wake you up, and you can't sleep. So you just wake up, and it's kind of the same routine every day, right? So my morning drives kind of start with this big inhalation, because I'm just thinking about the day's work, all the duties for this day. So I just have to take this deep breath, and I'm just already tired taking a breath, because all that lies ahead for that day, all the responsibilities, and just constantly just seeking God's guidance, His help, knowing that it's really His work. Often we don't know what a day will look like, yet all we can do is just put it in God's hands, because we know that He does. So as a partner in His business, not mine, His business, we have the assurance that He is in control. Being custodians to His goodness comes with responsibilities, which then comes with added thoughts and energy. We know that blessings and talents can come in all different shapes and forms. It can be in the form of pain and sorrow. It can be through riches and poor, success and failures. Whatever that may look like, we have the assurance that He is with us. We are simply, I always say it, we're simply conduits of His goodness. As God trusts us with bigger and greater things, we have the privilege and obligation to be faithful custodians of His blessings. I remember when I was in dental school, I was so eager to graduate and pursue my dream of going overseas and become a mission dentist. That simple desire and looking forward to something ahead was part of the journey. Or while I was in Zambia trying to remodel our just ugly clinic and to build and make changes, everything from looking for water so we can drill a borehole to just fixing leaking roofs. And as frustrating as it may have been, we're all part of the journey. So looking back now, there were many hard moments in my life. But those hard moments actually prepared me for the next turn in life. So now we have the private practice ownership and raising 3 kids, and that was a different task, different journey, different hard. But life in some ways seems to be like this, right? And life in many ways can be like this story that I'm going to share. And some of you may be aware of this, familiar with this story, but it's titled the Chinese Farmer Story. Have you heard of this story before? Maybe you heard it in different shapes and forms, but it's called the Chinese Farmer Story. It says, once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer who had a horse ran away. His horse ran away. And that evening, all his neighbors came and they said, "Oh, we're so sorry that you lost your horse and your horse is gone, and it's an unfortunate turn of events." And the farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, the horse came back, bringing in 7 wild horses with it. And the evening, and everybody looked back and said, "Oh, isn't that lucky? What great turn of events. You have 8 horses." The farmer said, "Maybe." The following day, his son tried to break one of those horses while riding it. He was thrown and broke his leg. The neighbor said, "Oh dear, that's not good." And the farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, the conscription officers came around to conscript people into the army. They rejected his son because he had a broken leg. And again, the neighbor said, "Oh, isn't that great news?" Again, he said, "Maybe." Doesn't it sound like life? The highs and lows, with the only certainty being life's uncertainty. I'm glad as believers we can take it to God in prayer and to trust in His leading and plans. Ultimately, He has a plan, knowing that He will not withhold anything good from us. So instead of the maybes, we have the assurance that God's in control, and we can move confidently and with certainty, knowing that He will be with us. Some of our greatest blessings and strength can come from the valleys of sweat, suffering, and uncertainty. Once we learn to accept this, the easier it'll be to face life's journey and move onward, forward, and upwards with confidence. So the next bullet point here is build with the end in mind, daring to go beyond dentistry. So some of us are just comfortable just working, and that's perfectly fine. Some people are comfortable just running their practice. Some of them are a part of a larger group practice. Some of them have multiple practice. Whatever it is, God has a plan for you. And but sometimes it's good to go beyond dentistry. I think God has great plans, and if you're willing to partner with Him, I say it's hard to fail because He's your greatest partner, right? And so, so what will your end look like? Have you ever considered that? Sometimes it's good to, I say this sometimes to myself that I need to have this, I have to talk to this man in the mirror. So it's weird, but I talk to myself. I look at that man in the mirror and ask him all these questions. And one of the things is, what will your end look like? What are you doing here? Why do you do what you do? And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of our practice or our profession? The sooner we have answers to those things, the clearer our lives will be. And so if you haven't had those conversations, it's something worth considering. They said an unexamined life is not worth living at all. Isn't that true? We need to take stock of where we are, who we are. The reality is until Jesus comes, life can seem like a game of what game? They say a game of Monopoly for some of us. We're taking a few steps forward, a few steps back. Some are paying rent here, paying rent there. Some get to go to jail. Some get to rent homes. Some get to own places like Park Place and Boardwalk. In between the game of Monopoly, we get to participate in leading others to Christ and to be burden bearers. But at the end of life, if Jesus doesn't come, and as with the end of the Monopoly game, what happens? Everything goes back in the box. Everything. Says, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Some are gifted with their academic knowledge, while others are amazing artists. Then you have amazing musicians and athletes, or others that are just business savvy. You may have some in this group that checks off all of those things. But for most of us, we're very limited in our talents that we have, and yet we are entrusted to grow it for his kingdom. And we all kind of know the parable of the talents. Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30, you can review that. But God gives us all these talents. And some are just not wanting to do anything with it. We're just bury it and do nothing. And some are a little more interested in growing that. Whatever it is, God desires us to utilize his gifts and talents in a way that may honor him. Perhaps for some today, these talents entrusted to us may be his dental business or other business projects, which can be used for the advancement of his kingdom. So we are all called to be faithful stewards. One of my favorite quotes is this, and I think it's maybe because I'm at a season in my life where this speaks to me, and I think it can speak to all of us. It says, "It is not the empty cup that we have trouble carrying. It is the cup full to the brim that must be carefully balanced. Afflictions, adversities may cause much inconvenience and may bring great depression, but it is prosperity that is dangerous to spiritual life." I hope that we can kind of resonate to that. I think we've all lived off rice and beans. We were completely happy. We've all gone through hard times, and we all made it. But when it comes to prosperity, when the cup is full, I think it's so dangerous for human beings that we must have a spirit of humility and to be able to depend on God regardless of what happens. So another thing is, I just want to make sure we have time here. We may run out of time, but being destitute helps no one, and it's definitely not a badge of honor for Christianity. Sometimes we think, just being poor makes me a better Christian. No. I personally think that's foolish. I mean, honors nobody. It doesn't even help you to be destitute. So I clearly remember the day working in Zambia. There was no proper orientation. I just got there, and it was just like, here it is, sink or swim. Considering it was a clinic in Africa, I didn't expect much out of it. I wasn't expecting any fancy things, but I came in there was literally nothing. They got some old amalgam that was expired, some hand pieces that was squeaking, and you get that picture. And there was no honor. There was no honor being destitute. It helps no one, not even ourselves, to be in a condition like that. And this was our clinic. And so we had no supplies. We were back in salaries. We're in the red. In the name of Christianity, this is kind of what our institution looked like. And I don't know how anyone could take pride in that. I for sure couldn't. But maybe in the name of being destitute, this was kind of like this badge of honor. But it definitely didn't resonate with me. So in the name of Mission Clinic, we were the tails when we should be the heads. How does this honor God? We spent the next 6 years turning it around to be this light on a hill, not for others to see, but through that light, others may see God's goodness mercy, and love. And that was our effort and our goal. And it was such a joy to be a part of that journey, to be a part of that building experience, because sometimes if you're at the bottom, you can only go up, and it makes it easy to do that, right? But if you're at the top, it's hard to sustain and retain that. In our practice, in our personal practice, we can be in a similar predicament as well. Like, how is it helpful for you to be stressed, to worry about covering your overhead? How is it helpful to have team members undertrained, underpaid, not being able to provide the care that you desire for your patients? It's just a tireless trap, and just barely getting by. It's my belief that you'll get jaded pretty quickly to be in a practice like that. So whatever success may look like to you, always remember that we're simply custodians of His goodness, including our success and influence. God desires to use all of that. And ultimately, our success is God's success, and He'll continue to bless our efforts there. Just to move on here, I started... The hard lessons and challenging times that we've had through our journey has given us the confidence to build our first dental practice. We were too cheap to find a contractor, so we built our own house. I guess you're naive, so you can do these things, and it worked out, fortunately. And then we moved on to other projects, and we're currently involved in a big project that's pretty exciting. This is kind of what gets us going and gets us up and allows us to deal with the hardships and the stresses. But as I started off by saying that we've recruited a few families now. Come January, will be 5 families to be a part of this larger vision that we have for Kauai, and to create a center of influence is what's really exciting. To have a place that's neutral in location, to minister to the needs of the community, it's such a joy to be a part of. So about 3 years ago, our family, during COVID, purchased the largest and the last cinema on the island. Some people were bummed out because they were hoping that someone can keep the cinema going. But listen, like hot dogs, $1, movie tickets, 90% goes to Hollywood. You can't even pay for the electricity. And so we got into this fourplex with 150 parking stalls, and each theater, we call it singleplex, can seat about 250 people. So we had this amazing opportunity, and it was located in central, next to all these box stores. You got Target, Ross, Costco, Home Depot. So very convenient for anyone to not miss where this is. Our vision was to develop this fourplex to build my new dental facility, my wife's ophthalmology clinic there, to one day have maybe even we call it kind of a surgery, office-based surgery center in there. But we decided to keep one because we wanted to have a platform where we can funnel all our patients into this. So the idea is, we'll run our dental, she'll run hers, we'll have all these things, we'll have a concession stand where we can have a bread center or a juice center, and all of that would work towards funneling and building trust, mingling, understanding, elevating the community, and then letting them know, hey, listen, twice a month we got talks on mental health, talks on family 101. Why is it that our country is falling apart? Guess what? Our family unit's broken. The enemy is in there alive. Our community is falling apart because the basic building blocks of families are separated. And so we can have these family 101, mental health 101, credit card 101, health 101, creation story. All these things, fitness, all these will ultimately lead to seminars and the great hope found in Jesus. So this is kind of a project that we're working on. It's exciting. We are also building apartments above the cinema because you have the height. So when you have the height, you can build the apartment. So it's just been such a joy to be a part of part of this building project. It has been such a big task as well. So I want to kind of show you a little glimpse of it. So it looked something like this. We had 4 of these screens, and some days we watched My Octopus Teacher, Sound of Music, all these family-oriented stuff. So it was good just to invite our friends and family to watch it. So it had some of them look like this. We gutted everything out. We had to put footings a lot of structural stuff, a lot of steel I-beams and support systems to build the upstairs, and just a lot of mess, a lot of work. It's really development. We had to pour concrete again because there was a slope, a 3 feet difference. So imagine bringing in all the gravels and to reset the foundation. It was definitely more than what we had ever thought. Pouring in concrete there, putting in the floors, the ceiling or the floors for the second floor. These are kind of the framing part of it, bringing the HVAC. The plumbing is done, steel frames just for the office. So as I mentioned, that the new office will be open at the end of this month. So cabinets, everything is going in. It's just a busy busy phase of our life. But it's so exciting to know that we have a neutral place where people can actually come. They don't feel... We've done this depression programs at our church and feeding. Guess what? They don't come. I don't know why. People just don't want to come to church, I guess, but it's just very hard. But if you have a neutral place where they trust us as providers because we care for them. My wife can do that. We got all these other people doing it. We have a juice bar that we can work with, local farmers market, just feeding them, providing them to meet their needs. I think we're on to this. So it's pretty exciting to see what that would look like. And so it keeps us busy. And we're constantly recruiting. And it's fun to see our small little church grow, to have the foundation that's needed to launch projects, and to have young kids be a part of it, to see all of that. And so in closing, I kind of wanted to share with you one more thought. I know the last thing is to recognize the one spirit amongst diverse methods and approaches in dental ministry. So we must get beyond thinking ministry is just giving Bible studies and sharing truths. At its most fundamental level, I think we believe we must genuinely desire the best in others, whether they accept Christ or not. I think we must care for them honestly. And so, as this quote mentions, we're all woven together in the great web of humanity. And whatever we can do to benefit and uplift others will reflect in blessing upon ourselves. The law of mutual dependence runs deep through all classes of society. So, it says that we sometimes forget that Apostle Paul's tent-making business was not just a business to support his preaching business. Sometimes you've heard that, this is my tent-making business so I can do ministry. But his tent-making business was his ministry, using the proceeds to help the work of Christ and the community. His time spent in the sewing shop, marketplace, business transaction with customers, engagements with various members of the community, whether it's in synagogues preaching or in prison, were all witness to the hope found in Jesus. In other words, Paul's witness was not solely due to his gift as a preacher or as an apostle, but it was also how he ran his tent-making business. He mingled with others. He showed sympathy. He met their needs, won their confidence. And that is why people were allowed to follow him or follow Jesus. So even some of us are not engaged. We may not be engaging in Bible studies with our team, patients, neighbors, but just like Paul, may your life be a ministry that testifies of the loving God that loves them. Amongst the diverse methods and approaches, may His Spirit continue to lead and guide you. Thank you for your time.